Episode 92, the winningest coach in Division I women's lacrosse history, Cindy Timchal. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Cindy Timchal. Cindy is the head coach for the women's lacrosse team at the United States Naval Academy. She is the NCAA's all-time leader in career wins for Division I women's college lacrosse. She has won 8 national championships, 7 of which were won consecutively while at the University of Maryland. And as coach at the Naval Academy women's lacrosse team, she became the first coach to lead a Service Academy women's team to a Final Four. She's been named National Coach of the Year twice. Cindy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Glenn. It's a pleasure to be here today.
The pleasure is mine, I promise you. Yeah. So I got to start with a really important question for you.
All right.
Are you going to be watching the Army-Navy football game this weekend?
100%. It's such an amazing week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really something that goes far beyond, it's just mystical to experience, Army-Navy football, the tradition, the history. It's something that if you haven't witnessed it in person or been a part of it for the whole week leading up to the game, it's just a lot of chi, a lot of energy, a lot of, it's just all about celebrating, service academies and celebrating competition and go Navy beat Army.
Did you hear what they did yesterday, what the Navy did?
I actually didn't. I think it was something about an error.
They
You're really putting me on the spot.
No. Well, I will share with you. I just read about it before we jumped on here.
Yeah.
Some Navy pilots flew over the West Point campus and dropped these beat Army ping pong balls, all over the place. The season is more or less over for both teams, but I guess they still take the game pretty seriously, huh?
Yeah. I mean, again, it is a celebration of what football is all about. I mean, certainly we've had these epic, collegiate football games throughout this entire fall, 2022. And, Navy and Army is right up there with some of the best in terms of viewership, in terms of people just really locking in to understand that these two teams are trying to compete at the highest level, but also, serving. They're going to, be commissioned as officers and they're going to serve the United States of America. So it really embraces so much of probably, Glenn, what you're looking at in terms of whether it's a coach or a leader or, how we connect with these young, in my case, athletes, and in my case, lacrosse players to really just put it out there all on the line, regardless of whether you're going to some championship or bowl game, it matters. It really does matter for both programs.
Yeah, I have the utmost respect for anyone in any of our armed forces. I really do. So you're about, 2 months away from the start of the lacrosse season?
Yeah, yes.
More or less? Yeah. Is this a very intense time for you as you gear up? Is it still a somewhat loose and let's just relax and start practicing getting into the rhythm? Or where's your mindset right now, T-minus 2 months?
Yeah, it's really a time of reflection. Tonight we have actually our team holiday dinner. We celebrate, we had an amazing fall ball, which is a non-championship season. We get to play a lot of great teams and get better. And now, fall ball matters in that I feel like anytime you step out on the field, you don't want to give away anything like greatness, like, oh, well, we showed up, but we really didn't compete. Mm-hmm. And regardless of the score or the outcome, we really don't keep score in the fall. I feel like it really does prepare us for the championship, spring 2023, season. And, I want our players to enjoy the Thanksgiving and now the holidays coming up. but, keep in the back of their mind about, lacrosse and how united our team is and how connected, our team is, for not only just to compete together, but also for something far greater. As an example, I'm witnessing this week on Saturday, the Army-Navy football game.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you did multiple sports in college and multiple sports in high school. When you were young, were you into sports and were you super competitive? Like, where does all that come from?
Yeah, where I grew up in an era where you didn't come home until the, street lights went on, and I had a playground. So, I grew up in Havertown, Pennsylvania. So those, Delco people or Mayor of Easton fans, it is exactly the way it looks like on that particular show. Like a little Stuckyville like. And I actually was very fortunate to grow up in an area where sports was important, and we played competitive field hockey and softball in elementary school. And then again, played all summer. I played on a baseball team. I seemingly was athletic. And as you know, parents just shooed you out the door. They didn't want you inside the house. They wanted you outside. And I think that era of time really led to the whole idea of embracing being an athlete and, wanting to coach, wanting to teach. And that's my path that early on in Havertown, Pennsylvania. And that's kind of, and also being able to play different sports. There wasn't lacrosse in elementary school, so I played, field hockey and softball. And I was fortunate.
But I grew up in one of those eras where, again, don't come back till dinner time and otherwise have fun. But, all the kids would want to go out and play and interact. Not all of them necessarily were doing it to, quote unquote, compete. And so where did that competitive streak come from? Were your parents very competitive, or was that just all you? You were just always wired that way?
Yeah. I mean, my mom played, like 6-woman basketball at Lansdowne High School. My dad went to a school in Philadelphia. Yeah, they were relatively athletic. I just think, back then they both worked and busy, and again, fortunate to have playmates and a playground. Playing is a big part. When I say play, that playing spirit is a big part of wanting to grow up and then become a Division I athlete in this case, or playing beyond that. You get that playing spirit early on. And as long as it's fun and you're active and you come home tired, and I think that was a big part of why I coach now and why I love to coach.
Like you said, there was softball, there was field hockey, I think there was basketball. When did lacrosse enter the mix?
This is really a unique story, because although Haverford High School had girls lacrosse, I dabbled in a little bit of, basketball and field hockey and some volleyball, and I didn't play lacrosse. I played some fall tennis. I was really a big tennis. We had at Grange Field in Havertown these amazing clay courts, which you didn't know were so amazing, because who would ever grow up playing on clay courts? And so I really had this kind of love for tennis and followed all the greats. But when I got to college, my friends were all lacrosse players, and we had the unique opportunity that many of my older friends were lacrosse players, and they took the freshmen and they even invited athletes that were not lacrosse players to learn how to play the game. So it was a little bit of a mentorship right there and then at Westchester University to allow me that chance. And back in that day, Glenn, whether you played it or not, we had freshman teams. They even had them in college. I mean, yeah, in college like Westchester, but the freshman team, no freshman played on a Division I program. So it was an opportunity. I would have never had that opportunity if I went anywhere else. What I decided is I'm going to go with my strengths and try to highlight them, which was really just being really fast and being really fast. I wasn't really much of anything else. Couldn't catch, couldn't throw. I knew I could get better every day. And if I couldn't catch and throw, I was going to get that extra ground ball and do the little things that really make a big difference when you're playing and competing. Try to do the things that maybe other players either didn't have to do because they were stars. But I thought if I could run fast, get to the ball and knew who to get the ball to. It's kind of like whether it's Tom Brady last night, he knows who to get the ball to, and everybody else works hard. So I knew I had to work hard and get the ball to the key players. And, that kind of, I felt like I had wonderful, amazing professors and coaches in college. And it was really, and it kind of like segues right into what you're all about. It was really an education of learning how to teach, how to play with a team. In that era, Westchester University was teaching young college students and student athletes how to do all that.
You would go on to graduate, and I think your first coaching gig at the high school level was doing 3 sports. I think you did lacrosse, field hockey, and basketball, right?
Yeah.
And of course, in high school, you can sort of be a jack of all trades. You almost have to just to get on the payroll. But then to go from the high school to the collegiate level, you obviously, have to, I think, specialize to some degree. So, and I think your first coaching at the collegiate level was as an assistant at Penn.
Yeah.
Why did you decide on lacrosse? Why not some of these other sports?
Well, at the end of the day, when I talked about the sports that I certainly dabbled in, whether it was in elementary school to high school, when I was at Westchester, and although I did play a fair amount of tennis and some basketball, it was really lacrosse that I excelled in. And it could have been, again, an amazing group of young, talented lacrosse players and that connection. But most of my accolades, I became the captain of the team. I made, and back then there was no national championship. We had what they call all college teams, and I made first team. And those are the types of things. So excelling in that area just really wanted me to gravitate towards that. And even though at Unionville High School, I did coach, field hockey, basketball, and lacrosse, when given the opportunity, I was asked to come on as an assistant coach at the University of Penn as a field hockey assistant and lacrosse assistant. And that was very common back then, a dual sport coach at a Division I school, whether it was an Ivy school like Penn or Princeton. And that's where, I kind of just gravitated to that particular sport.
Yeah. Well, you're there all of, I think, 1 year.
Yeah.
Before being offered this head coaching job at Northwestern. And in Northwestern, the program was just getting off the ground. You hadn't had but 1 year to be, quote unquote, mentored, if you will, at a collegiate coaching level. And now you're at Northwestern, a brand new program. There's no money for scholarships of any kind.
Yeah.
So you've almost got 2 hands tied behind your back. Was that sort of overwhelming for you, or did you approach it as, well, it's a new program, so nothing to lose, why not?
Glenn, I'm sure just those moments in time when given that chance, Ann Sage was a head coach at UPenn, gave me a chance to come to her program. Nancy Stevens had just been hired as a head field hockey coach she was the head coach at F&M, Division III program. And she said, Cindy, you want to come out to Northwestern? Of course, everybody back then, because Northwestern has made its mark and name, not just for, lacrosse more, recently, and field hockey and women's basketball and football and basketball. But everybody thought I was going to Northeastern, which is in Boston area. Even getting on the phone and recruiting, I had to say, I'm at Northwestern. Well, where is that? That type of thing. Again, I believe just like picking up lacrosse in college, it was definitely a leap of faith.
Wait, whose leap of faith? Theirs or yours?
Well, both.
Okay.
I mean, who would thought of, adding lacrosse in the Midwest? That was never heard of. And actually, though, we ended up playing schools like Denison and Oberlin, these Division III programs that are like on this like whole strip in Ohio. Ohio has really been kind of a pioneer in women's lacrosse at the Division III level. And now they have at least 4 or 5 Division I programs in the state of Ohio, which is something you wouldn't think. But in Illinois and going to Northwestern, I guess it was a leap of faith for me to leave the East Coast, come out, be with one of my best friends who I played with in college. And it was just an amazing experience to be a part of the Big Ten.
But no part of you felt like, gosh, maybe I should take some more time as an assistant, learn more tricks of the trade. Let me figure out what I'm doing here. You just felt like, why not? They're giving it to me. Just, go for it.
And Glenn, I want to just say, I don't think I ever thought twice about it. I was looking at being opportunistic, having this, and again, being dual now. I was still an assistant in field hockey, which had the scholarships. And again, it was not uncommon, whether it was at Penn State or even at the University of Maryland, where I ultimately left, Northwestern to go to. Field hockey lacrosse combination players was always kind of part of the conversation. So although no scholarships in lacrosse, I benefited from scholarship field hockey players that ended up helping us be, pretty darn successful based on the resources and the support level at that time to compete at a decent level at an amazing school. I mean, I think Northwestern is the only private school in the Big Ten, the smallest, 6,500, not 65,000 like Ohio State. I really embrace that idea of, a gorgeous campus in Evanston, Illinois, really dedicated to high academics. And it ended up being an attractive recruiting tool for East Coast players, again, like me as a coach, for them as players to take that leap and to become something, like you're going to come in and really be the pioneer, the player that really puts Northwestern on the map.
Yeah, well, you were definitely a pioneering coach. I'll tell you that. And we could probably spend the whole podcast just talking about what you did, with that program. But, you took them to the tournament many of those years that you were there. And then based on all that success you had, you're then offered this head coaching job at Maryland, which at the time, they already had one national championship under the belt, right?
Yeah.
And a number of Final Four appearances. So already an elite program day one. So with all this on the line, again, it's sort of nothing to lose with Northwestern. It's a new program. Probably expectations weren't all that high. But now you're coming into this program, I'm sure lots of expectations. Again, completely fearless going in, or were you a little bit anxious coming into this one?
And Glenn, you hit it. It's a little bit of both, a little bit of anxious. Mm-hmm. When you're really anxious, it's kind of, you're thinking about, it's like an athlete when you're competing. If they're nervous, it's okay to be nervous, but sometimes you're nervous because they're thinking about outcome. Like, what if we don't do well, or what if we don't win? Mm-hmm. So that's where the anxiety comes. I felt a little bit of anxiety. I literally in my mind said, I'm going to go to Maryland because I have a chance at winning a national championship. Don't know why. We had great program at Northwestern. Just thought it was a place to go, knowing that they've already won. And also knowing there was one thing about the University of Maryland and the state of Maryland, but I'll speak on behalf of the University of Maryland. They love lacrosse and they supported women, and in this case, women's lacrosse at a really decent level. Back then, scholarships still are and were queen. You needed to get the athletes in. So that just, when you chose kind of a dedication of a program, I think Bobby Kremen said this when he was coaching at Georgia Tech, it's the facilities, it's seeing that level of support. I know now sports is a little bit different in the last couple of years, but certainly knowing that, I felt like I had a chance. And even though they've won before, it doesn't guarantee you're going to win again, but the thought of, okay, local Maryland, and Glenn, in actuality, as amazing Maryland, the state of Maryland lacrosse on both the boys and girls side, men and women, we aren't really necessarily the best players were from the state of Maryland. My big recruiting was outside of Philadelphia, northern New Jersey, central New Jersey. So it's interesting that then over time, Maryland became really, the queen of girls lacrosse.
Well, over time, hang on, Cindy, your first year, your first year,
I know,
you took them to a national championship, and then you win the entire thing your second year.
I know.
So it didn't take you very long to have impact there. It's incredible.
Yeah, and again, I think it certainly really speaks volume for the University of Maryland. When you get that level of support and, the administration really wanting you to do well. I mean, when you're hired by an athletic director, it was Andy Geiger, who, when they hire someone that they feel like I hired you, they want to give you a little boost and and credit really has to go to Sue Tyler, who gave up the coaching part and still remained as an administrator. It was really, I got to the national championship final with her players. I mean, let's be, blunt about it. It wasn't mine because I arrived literally right before the season was starting. It was a very unique situation.
Well, can I ask you, did those players go to the national championship the year before you joined?
I don't recall. I do remember one thing. There was an expression they were telling me, and of course I kind of followed the lead, is that they called themselves Silver Bells. And that's because they were in a lot of championship finals, not winning it. Yeah. And of course, it does seem a little trite because just having the chance of going to a national championship game and competing at that level is just, you begin to appreciate all that you've done the entire season. And that's why, Glenn, it's really important not to get off the answer is that, you got to enjoy the journey. If you're only defined by winning championships, well, it's only one team that wins. And
says the coach, let me, I'm sorry, this is where you sit back and just listen to the praise. You go on to lead Maryland for 16 seasons. I had to fact check myself like multiple times to get this straight, right? 16 seasons, and you walked away with 8 national titles.
Yeah.
So half of the time you coached there, you walked away with a national championship. And by the way, 7 of those consecutively. I was going through my brain, and maybe I could go onto Wikipedia, but the only other coach I can think of that did anything like that at a Division I level in terms of that number of consecutive championships was John Wooden.
Yeah.
He had 7 in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting. He couldn't win that 8th in a row, and he probably really kind of bothered him because then he came back, whether it was the next year or a couple of years later, and won another whole slew. He crushed it in the national championship category over here. But yeah, you're right, Glenn. I thought going to the University of Maryland would give me a chance of winning a national championship. And probably I knew that because at Northwestern, we got into the NCAAs and we were going to just coming up a little short. And yet there was no guarantee. And I just felt that win or lose, we're always going to we're going to be in the hunt. But going back to that, after we started winning a lot, we just started really thinking about not really winning as much as enjoying the journey, as much as knowing that at any time it could be an official's call or an off day that someone's going to, I don't know, a little bit like last night's women's soccer, like the jaws of victory were snatched from UNC as UCLA scores with 16 seconds to go. That's the beauty of sport. Those are the things that can happen. And it's kind of surreal because now you're talking about when you watch a game, it's almost witnessing, a life unfolding. You have the ups, the downs, the challenges, the highs, the lows. It really is a really unique. That's why there's such an obsession with playing and sport, but the journey and enjoying. I always say the team that has the most fun is really going to win.
I want to talk about that. And let's just talk about culture in general, because I saw this over and over and over from all the interviews of former players, former assistant coaches, which is you created some kind of environment that was just very inspiring and enjoyable for the players. So, what is it that you did to create an atmosphere where people really enjoyed, quote unquote, coming to work?
Well, I want to go back. We had a vice admiral in the Marine Corps speak to the men's and women's lacrosse team last night. He started playing lacrosse on a ROTC scholarship, but he played club lacrosse at Tulane. And, the first time he's out on the field and it's club, and his coach, he can never stop talking about his coach. And his coach, he got knocked down to the ground. The coach came over and said, "You're not as good as you thought you were." And, it's kind of like that was a moment that kind of broke the ice, and he knew he had a lot to learn. And I do believe that our players took things not so seriously, but seriously. And it's like the yin and yang. They wanted to be good, but they wanted to be good in a way that set each other up, like the selflessness, and to again, try to do it for something more than just winning. Because if you just do it for winning, it seems kind of shallow. Maybe just show up and just put it all out there. And let's see at the end of the game, let's look up at the scoreboard and see whether or not it's a reflective of how connected we are, how hard we're playing together, how much we enjoy the competition.
Now that you mention it, there's a quote. I think it's from your time more recently at the Naval Academy, but it applies here, so I'm just going to read it. "We were trying not to dictate the level of success of our program by the scoreboard. The scoreboard wasn't going to dictate whether we were good or bad. Our philosophy is you put everything out in the line during the game and you look at the scoreboard and you come up short, you can't have any regrets." So your view is if you feel like people, left it all on the floor, as they say, right, on the field in this case, you feel good. Win or lose, doesn't matter. We gave it our all. Let's smile, give each other hugs, and move on to live another day, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, winning matters, but you get to that place, again, it's not guaranteeing victory, but I guarantee you will win more games. If you stay connected, if you stay true to what you say you're going to do, if you can make the zero regrets would be an idea of when the game ended, I wish I got back on defense when I had that opportunity. I wish I dived for that loose ball. Those are the kind, and to say, okay, so if those are two things you're going to regret, let's do something up front. Let's get back when we're tired. Let's dive for that loose ball. And those are tangible things. Those are things you actually can do. I can't guarantee, or one of my players say, hey, coach, I'm going to score, 5 goals today. Well, that could or couldn't happen, but I can guarantee you, coach, that I'm going to be a great team player, that I'm going to be be there for each other, a great leader, and when things get tough, I'm going to even dig down deeper. The winning, we never thought we were ever going to win 7 in a row, but we never thought, I think we were very gracious of our opponents, and we treated our opponents as a partnership, that if they would beat us, they're teaching us a lesson that we weren't doing things very well, whether it was in practice or whether it was during the game. And I think if we can shift our focus that way, competing, and a lot of what goes with it and winning, it could change a lot of lives that maybe we lost, but we were so connected and we learned each time.
You mentioned earlier this idea of togetherness, your word. And so there was a quote I read from a former player of yours. I forget who it was, or I would give them attribution here, but this is the quote. It says, "One of the things about Maryland," this is back during your time coaching there, "one of the things about Maryland lacrosse is the sense of unity we got once we stepped on the field. Maryland girls are blonde and dark, Southern belles and street smart New Yorkers, public school and private school, elite and working class, bookhounds and jocks," which I found really interesting. In my naivete, candidly, I thought lacrosse teams are pretty homogenous, but I guess they're not. So was there a role that you played in enabling that kind of unity?
I don't want to say it was all about me. I really do believe that your players They decide, I never stepped on a field and scored a goal for Maryland or for the Naval Academy. You just, give them the tools and it's like guided discovery, discovering how good they can be, discovering that if you're an off day, you can find different ways of helping your teammates. And that kind of potpourri of our athletes, just witnessing players coming together is kind of a message that we want to, we the people give, unite people together. And that's what we're really looking for, to unite our team. And when we step out on the field, I want people to go, that's a really special team. That team is connected. They, train hard, win or lose, you want them to be the team that again, plays for something more than just having to beat somebody.
Well, let me ask you, Maryland would have access, I assume, to the top lacrosse talent across the country.
Yeah.
Not only Maryland, but you certainly would have, your fair shot at them. So beyond just looking at the superstars, is there something you're looking at in terms of saying, are these women that are going to fit into the kind of culture I'm trying to create here? Or maybe, were there ever superstars that you said, yeah, they're incredibly talented, but I think they're going to be focused on themselves and nothing else. I don't know that they're going to be part of this broader team. I think they just want the highlight reel. But does that ever happen?
As a head coach, you stay as consistent as possible. And when a player decides to say yes, whether it was to then, Northwestern, or yes to Maryland, or yes to Navy, I think it's so much more than just my coaching. It's just every day getting that little bit of connection. Most coaches know that, I know it's not the right word, but you can't make a player, want to do better or want to run faster. You want to provide an environment in which they want to do it for themselves, for their teammates, for represent when they put the uniform on. Put that uniform on, play the game, and when you step off the field, let's take that uniform off. Let's put it in a better place. Let's fold it up and let's put that uniform in a better place. But, that connection, most people feel that there is a buy-in about team play and doing it for everyone. And I watched an interview on the Today Show a couple of days ago where there's two of the captains from Team USA Soccer. And, all they talked about really is really doing it for the players that didn't get to go in the game, because without them, they couldn't be on the field. It's again, that yin and yang. The players that didn't get a chance to go on the field are so much more, and a big part of the level of success of Team USA men's soccer. And you need to validate that as a coach, that everyone matters, that you showing up matters. I believe that that's kind of the answer of when a person comes into it. Maybe there's a little bit of ego involved, or I want to score more goals, or I want to do that. But as time goes on, I think they realize they're really doing it, for the team. They kind of join in on that. But you do have to have that environment. It has to be safe. It has to be free. It has to feel and want it to be the best part of their day is coming out to lacrosse practice. I get to be with my best friends. I get to compete hard. We have competition drills and we have get better drills, and make it fun, make it exciting.
You call the style of play relaxed intensity. Those are your words. What does that mean?
If there's a big game coming up and there's a lot at stake, what happens sometimes, and I'm just talking about athletics and athletes in general, you listen too much to the media. And media matters. They're covering our sport. But sometimes they get you to convince you that you're better than what you really are. But, all of a sudden you realize, this big game and we got to win. And what if we don't win? And that's when athletes come out, and when the whistle blows, they're three things: tight, tense, and tentative. you can't play well if you're tight. You have to be loose. You're tense. It's kind of the same way as being tight. And you're tentative because you're like, I'm not going to go for it. I'm going to hold back. And as you know, you've witnessed so many sports, there's no holding back. You got to go for it. You have to go for it. And so I guess if you can be relaxed, and relaxed meaning that as long as you can focus on the moment that's hand, then that level of intensity will rise up. It will rise up. So, it sounds great. I hope it works sometimes. As a coach, that connection we talked about, some days you're like, I just don't think we're getting that message across. But ultimately, players want to learn as much as humanly possible about the game. They want to be coached up, and they do want to compete. They do want to go against whether it's the best of the best, or even if the team's not that good, they want to show that they can still play at a level and maybe not play down. Or if they're playing against a higher side, that they can stay up, and compete at that level regardless of the outcome.
Well, there's obviously the raw skills of the game and the strategy of the game. Then there's the mental piece, the mindset.
Yeah.
And I read that you had a sports psychologist that you brought in for the team, and this is years and years before this became in vogue. And also I read about a spiritual advisor. Was that one of the same?
The same person. Yeah. And it's really somebody who is truly an amazing man. His name is Jerry Lynch. Mm-hmm. He lives out in Santa Cruz, California. He's written his 12th book.
How did he help the team? What did he do?
I think there was a point in time where sports psychologists would have maybe a little bit of a negative connotation, especially as coaches. Well, why do I need that? Mm-hmm. I don't really need that. Or our players don't need it. I don't want any interruption. We have a mission. We have a plan. And again, we've witnessed a lot of the best athletes always have self-doubt. They always question whether they trained hard enough, whether they're good enough. And so to enhance that, a sports advisor or a sports enhancer like Jerry Lynch allows athletes to take away the pressure and to show up, kind of win the day. Don't show up just to win the game, win the day. Do all the things that you're going to do to prepare yourself for the competition. So he kind of changes that focus. So many times sports psychologists, you think, oh, this is an athlete that has too much ego, an athlete that, needs to, I wish he or she had a little hop in her step. And, how can we get them to want to, work harder? Well, it's more about embracing who you are and finding the answers internally. And as you said, if you witness anybody that's won a national championship, you rarely hear them say anything about, well, Joe Smith was amazing and this and that. They always talk about just pulling together and united spirits together, forming this unbreakable bond that allowed them to have that push through and in this case, win.
Was Jerry helpful to you in any way?
Absolutely. He's truly beyond words. Coaches are human beings, believe it or not.
Impossible.
And, I think that's one thing he talks about, like human being as opposed to human doing. So a human being has to decide, well, what do I need to do in order to be the coach or the athlete I want to be? So if you ask that question, you're going to have the answer. And so those are the kind of surreal things that he can, with a coach. Of course, we're always thinking about what if we lose? We need to win. How can I connect better with my team? There are little things that creep in. And he has a way of just really kind of giving you this calmness as a coach and a reflection of what this whole thing is all about, sport, in a way that really, eases my mind as a coach. But certainly it's a wonderful connection. a few years ago when we got to the Final Four at Navy.
Which is amazing, by the way, that you took Navy to the Final Four.
It was amazing. And, when we beat Loyola to win our conference, and then we had to beat them again to advance in the NCAAs. And, there was an expression he used that our team picked up on. And he said, behind mountains, there are more mountains. So that stuck. That, okay, we did this. Let's go and do this.
I like that. There was another thing I read, some advice he gave to the team, which was slowing down is sometimes faster than speeding up.
Yeah.
Can you help me understand that one?
Sport now has become a huge data, event. In fact, the big thing in the World Cup soccer was doing the data of when you lose the ball, when you don't have the ball, how much time does it take to gain it back? That's a new stat in the book. And so regardless of the stats, I just think that you can do all the data, and this shows that if we make this pass, or this shows if we run this offense or have this defense, and we can get really caught up in the data points, analyticals of football and basketball and all these sports, soccer included. I mean, soccer's become this inverted pyramid. When I played a little bit of soccer and field hockey, there were 5 forwards and 2 midfielders and 3 backs. Now they've inverted the whole thing. Now some have 1 striker, 1 forward. There's so much change and so much data points. But Jerry has, just given myself, individual athletes, and teams more of a reason to discover, who they are, what a sport is all about, and a connection that goes, again, far beyond, what the scoreboard says or the number of wins and losses. And yet, knowing that we're in an arena of Division I sport and winning and losing matters, I think the connection, the more that the coaches can be relevant to the players, the more, as Ted Lasso says, the more we can be curious about anything, about, I wonder if I can make this shot. I wonder if I can help this defender get better. The more we can be curious, the more we grow. And, at the end of the day, I feel like as a coach, the things that maybe been said from the University of Maryland players or Navy players, like 10 years down the road, and they're amazing citizens and doing wonderful things, that's really kind of winning in itself too.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, that year you took Navy to the Final Four. To me, what was just as impressive is every other team playing in the Final Four that year, Maryland, Penn State, I think Boston College, each of them was coached by a former player or former assistant coach under you.
Yeah.
That's incredible. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I mean, they all stand out, Kathy Nelson-Reese and Missy Holmes, Doherty. I feel like Acacia Walker walking into Boston College, with really no winning history at all. They continue to do and still are amazing coaches. They're just some of the best you can talk about.
They must have seen how passionate you are about coaching, right? Teaching, giving back.
They told me I had some quotes that I'm like, did I really say that? But no, I think you just need to be real. You need to tell your players, you take responsibility. We lost that game. I know we could have done better. I should have prepared you better. It's a partnership. And if they feel like, again, that it matters, that mistakes in sport, is part of life. It's part of sport is making mistakes, but it's coming back. What do I do after I threw the ball away or missed the shot? What do I look like now? I maybe don't waver. There's, I am ready. I missed that, but here we go. I think if they pick up a little of that, I also feel like the quality of the coaching matters. And I've been fortunate enough to be connected with many of them.
You've been fortunate. They've been fortunate. I appreciate where you're coming from. But I do need to understand this move from Maryland to the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
Because like we went over the stats, right? I won't repeat them all, but it's the most incredible record I could ever imagine. And then 2006, you decide to say time to move on. And
Yeah.
not only do you leave the best lacrosse program in the country that you had really, granted, they were a very, very strong program when you joined, but you took them even to a higher level. But I think the Naval Academy didn't even have a Division I program. They had club lacrosse at the time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even a varsity sport. Help me understand the motivation behind that move, Cindy.
I want to say there were several reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I think the number one reason was to take on another challenge. I had done that at Northwestern, starting a new program.
Mm-hmm.
And although Maryland was very different because it was an established program, I also, was again connected with, really believed in Chet Glatchuk, our athletic director, because he wanted lacrosse at the Naval Academy. He wanted to be a Division I program. His daughter played at the University of North Carolina. It mattered to him. And it's kind of that adage of doing something that no one had done, like going to a service academy, here in Annapolis, beautiful Institute of Higher Education on the Severn River, and, recruit my head off. And knowing that coming to the Naval Academy isn't for everybody, but we had enough amazing, wonderful players from all over the country.
You wanted to go back. Like Coach K came from the Army. That's where his first 5 years was coaching the Army before he went to Duke. But once he got to Duke, I think the closest he ever came to leaving was an almost opportunity at the Los Angeles Lakers. And that was it.
Yeah.
And not to say that, by the way, that his measuring stick is, should be yours or anyone else's. But
No.
It sounds like you wanted to go back to a nascent program and build something from scratch. That you came to Maryland, 8 championships, and you felt like maybe you did what you could there, and now let me go try to help a program that needs, a stronger person at the helm here. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was just the right thing to do at that time. And zero regrets, because the players I coach are truly amazing. And maybe we don't win as much as we did at Maryland, but certainly we compete. We compete with our hair on fire. We just get after it. We just get after it. It's amazing just to continue to be coaching, to make a difference in young people's lives, and know that it matters. It really does matter. It's really what it's important. Just believing in something and starting from scratch and creating a championship level program. It's not just me. So many amazing coaches are defining themselves and programmatically by the things they've been able to do. And a lot of it because of the players. The players believe, the players are playing hard. I think that's the most rewarding part.
You're entering now your 40th or your 41st season?
Well, you're not supposed to say that.
Oh, that's bad. Well, look, I mean, 4 decades into it, it is rare to have that kind of longevity, and not to mention longevity at the highest levels. So, because I assume over those, and I'm no lacrosse expert here by any stretch, but I imagine like any sport, the game has evolved, culture has evolved. So when you think about your ability to stay at top of the game for that long, what do you attribute it to?
I was just following Coach K's lead. Keep coaching.
I love Coach K, but he never had 7 consecutive championships.
Well, yeah, and he had obviously an amazing run at Duke, and a lot of love. And we all think we have these most amazing athletes and players. It's like a family. You go through your ups and your downs, but at the end you embrace each other. It kind of starts with love and ends with love. I mean, and it's John Wooden said, he credits his level of success because he said there was a lot of love in his coaching. As profound and as simplistic as that sounds, sometimes we have to sit back and really take that in.
So we'll end with this, which is this podcast is called The Art of Excellence. And I I always love to hear how my guests define that word excellence.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it.
What anything that comes to mind? What do you think of?
Excellence is just really putting your all out there. You have to stay present. It's easy as a college student to think about the tests that they might have messed up in or the next paper they have to write. But excellence comes when they can really commit, and be present.
Well, my hunch, Cindy, is the way you think about working with these women, your philosophy, what you pour into it, whether they stay in the game and coach or move on, they probably carry a lot of life lessons throughout their careers, throughout their journeys. This is an absolute delight and honor, a privilege to sit down with you. It truly is. Incredible what you've done. I know you're not done yet. More to come. I wish you an incredible season. As much fun as winning games, but I'm sure the W's will come too. But thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Glenn. Thanks for inviting me to your arena to share some amazing ideas. I really appreciate that.
Hey, thanks for listening. Okay, don't go yet, please. 2 favors. I ask simply 2 favors. One, if you could please download the iTunes app. You could do it on your phone. You can do it on the computer. Take 60 seconds and leave a review. It means a lot. 2, you can find my episodes on several social media sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Find the one that you like the most. Find the one where you tend to have a lot of friends and followers. And if you could please either share it in the case of Facebook and LinkedIn, or retweet it on Twitter, that would mean the world to me. So those are the 2 asks I have. I love putting together this podcast. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Thank you so much, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.